Rebonjour, chers enfants, chers jeunes, chers collègues.
Good morning, dear friends, dear colleagues, dear collaborators, dear guests. We are now at the end of this first 1.5 days of our general debate day, discussion day on a very important subject that has really raised the commitment. Yes, there is translation. Yes, there is. There is translation on the English channel if you need it. So as I was saying, we are at the end of this first half day of our DGD day of general discussion, and I have the occasion with my colleagues who have been chairing the first, second and third working groups to introduce to you the conclusions from their working groups. I will be accompanied here by Mr. Bragi, by Mr. Rodriguez, and also by Mr. Benoit Van Kersbeek. I would like to go directly to the first speaker, Mr. Van Son, who will present the conclusions of the working group number 1, which was focusing on raising children in nurturing families in order to strengthen families and communities to prevent separation with lessons from the pandemic. Dear Mr. Gubranson, you have the floor.
Unfortunately, he is not online. He has not joined this call. So maybe we can go to Jose, who is here.
En attendant que Monsieur Gubranson puisse se connecter.
Meanwhile, we wait for Mr. Gubranson to connect. I would like to give the floor to Mr. José Rodríguez Reyes, who was chairing the second group, the second working group about taking into account the rights of children who are separated, unaccompanied, or without care. Mr. Rodriguez, you have the floor, please.
Bien. Gracias.
Thank you, dear Chair. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you, depending on where you are. The meeting that we've held has been a true challenge. It's been a challenge to overcome the technological difficulties of this type of meetings. In spite of all this, there have been very powerful and important messages. In our working group number 2, we've heard stories that told us that were stories of pain, of really truly difficult stories. But we've also heard stories of support. And it's important to highlight that when we were talking about support, it was said that that support is mainly family support. But we also heard about ruptures and breaking points in that support or with the family in relation or caused by bad decisions made by the state in some occasions. And this brought us to discuss some challenges that we are facing nowadays. One of the topics we mentioned was that family reintegration or reincorporation should be a state policy, that it was therefore highlighted that family reintegration requires permanent support, precisely in order to avoid new ruptures and new situations of pain to children and teenagers. It was also mentioned that children require a specific type of support, and that in the case of children and teenagers that belong to minorities, like for example, ethnic minorities, that's also an important challenge. So we need to take into account the different diversities that exist. Another important element we referred to was that a single solution is not the way to proceed, that each region will require different solutions, but solutions should be adapted to the different regions, but that this does not exclude the need and possibility of learning from other experiences. This means that today, this day of general discussion is absolutely relevant and important. We are listening to experiences of success, but we've also heard some experiences that failed for different reasons. And this means that we continue to monitor, and we need to continue creating new ways to approach the situations. These are very briefly the main ideas that I collected during the discussions in the working group number 2. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Mr. Rodriguez. I can see now that our colleague, Mr. Gubranson, is online. You have the floor, Mr. Gubranson.
Thank you, and very much. I do apologize for coming in late. There were some technical difficulties, but that has been resolved. Now, in the workshop that I chaired, which was, as you may recall, on ensuring that all children grow up in a safe and nurturing environment, families, how can we strengthen families, communities to prevent separations? We got a numerous wonderful presentation from different perspectives, but there were emergent themes that can be identified. The first one I found to be going through the set of interventions was the emphasis of listening to children and young people. Before any decisions are taken, we should listen carefully to children, both in terms of accumulating information about the family, the strengths and weaknesses, if you like, as well as the desires of the child on the desirable course of action. Now, children and young people want to be heard and listened to, but that's not an easy task. This requires training and education for adults on how to meaningfully listen and involve children and young people to elicit their narratives and act on that. Now, this was one sort of cross-cutting theme I found to be present in most of the interventions. Secondly, there was this emphasis on family welfare, if you like, on the welfare system in society and how that should address some of the causes that are mainly forcing children into care. What is poverty? And that requires, on behalf of the state, that we have a monetary transfer system ensuring adequate standards of living, combat poverty, ensure appropriate housing, etc. There is these general measures that the state should make sure is in place. Secondly, there is this need for social services for children and families, which you could say should be on 3 levels. These are services that have preventive effect on the possible family separation. First, we are talking about general social services which are directed mainly at the family as the basic unit of society. Diverse scope of services that meet diverse needs. These are general social services that are provided by the local authorities or the community services that many of families need. Then we need to have a more specific services, secondary services, which are targeted to specific needs. And these need to be individually designed interventions to address the type of issues that the families are facing. And then we need to have as well a kind of specialized services, which may require intense service. All of these should be flexible and designed to address these broad spectrum of needs. Now, an emphasis was given to the structure of these services, and in particular the child protection system. The case of Lithuania I found to be extremely interesting, where they ensured that the child protection system was centralized, which meant that you wouldn't place a child in care unless meeting certain criteria. In other words, there was a gatekeeping system that safeguarded children's right not to be separated from their parents. And if they were separated, if that became a necessity, then they would be placed within the larger family among the relatives for a certain period of time, while an assessment was made, while the family was mapped, if you like, for its strengths and risk factors and protective factors were identified before any further decision was taken. There were others who also highlighted this, the importance of analyzing the issues, the problems the families were facing, with a goal of coming to meet these adversities in an appropriate manner without separating families. Now, for those who need to be placed for a longer or shorter period of time, it was emphasized that these decisions would be subject to review. And we had, in fact, wonderful examples, one from Rwanda, the other from India, of young people who had been in care for years, in fact, and were then reintegrated into their family, their biological family. And that sort of underlined in my mind how the sort of potentials there are for reintegration, family unification of families. And this also underlies the importance of Article 25 in the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which puts the obligation of states to periodically review all placement decisions. Now, there were also important interventions that addressed issues like disability and the importance of the sort of social response to disability. We had a case of a child that was placed in an educational facility because the parents had desire for a child receiving education, and then that did not meet that boy's needs. And after years, he was able to be reintegrated with his family and take up his studies, and then made progress in terms of his study. So we can see that the issue of disability is pretty much about attitudes, as well, of course, as having flexible services that are designed for the individual needs. Then we can keep children with disability out of institutions. Children in conflict with the law, children with behavioral challenges. These are also topics that were addressed. The importance here was laid on empowering parents and introducing evidence-based procedures, evidence-based programs that have proven to have preventive efforts. Preventive outcomes with relation to out-of-home placements. These are intensive programs, oftentimes, that are provided within the family and the community where the child lives, and more states are implementing those. My final point, in fact, is the siblings issue. There was sort of running theme in these presentation we received and these speeches from the children and the professionals alike, that we must preserve siblings' relationship. At all costs, we must keep them together. And that was an issue that emerged in more than one of these interventions. I think I have covered most of it. Of course, these presentations were so rich that it's impossible to give them just treatment in such a short time, but so I think I will just conclude for now. Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Gubranson. Thank you so much for the richness of your words. We have less than 12 minutes, well, 11 minutes to be precise, and I'd like now to give the floor to my colleague who will present, Mr. Benoit, who will present the conclusions of the third working group on justice, access and accountability for children and the youth, and also for adults that have been raised in alternative care centers. You have the floor, Mr.
the topic of the third working group. We have started as the other groups, but with extremely moving testimonies. We have heard survivors of care who have described the institution that is supposed to protect them in words that we should not hear. There are places unsafe where slavery is taking place, abuse, threats, exploitation, separation from family and from siblings, lost childhoods, no legal status, no possibility to implement dreams, feeling unloved. So all these are the experience on which we need to build. But I would like to add that despite the fact of this extremely difficult experience, all the testimonies and the insight of the young people who, young men and girls who have expressed their experience, show that they want to do something from this experience. They have dreams and they have aspiration, but also they have aspiration and dreams for the future, and they want that their experience would be used and useful for the next generation. And this is absolutely amazing, and they really want to do something from this experience. We also have heard many times that among the children in care, some of them may have been even in more difficult condition. If there is reform in place, very often one forget to look at the situation of children with disabilities or children from most disadvantageous background, but also children from First Nations are also often forgotten. Among the solution, we have heard many extremely interesting suggestions, starting from registering all orphanages or institutions, because of course we want ensure justice and ensure that there is a monitoring in place. If we don't have a register and a mapping of all places where children are ending up in institution. And this is the starting point to start to work on ending impunity. We have heard, as the other groups have also underlined, the importance of hearing children and starting from the listening and what children have to say. We have also heard the importance also to look at the budget, how the budget and the finances and the financial means are used. And of course, if it's used to continue placing children in institution, we all know that we can use this financial means, public financial means, in many other ways. There is a need to change, but we have also heard many good and very strong experience that have led to some change. We have some knowledge on what are the effective remedies. We have heard many kind of commission inquiries that have been delivering good reports and recommendations that of course need to be implemented. On the one hand, we have to redress for the past and to look at what happened in the past and to try to assess correctly the situation. But on the other hand, we have to ensure that this will not happen again for the future, and so the changes have to be implemented. One of the speakers talked about the different system of or different approaches for this commission of inquiry, a legal approach using court, the judiciary to bring change, administrative bodies that could also intervene and sometimes work also on the level of mediation, or a mixed system that would use both. When we talk about redress, trying to repair what has been harmed in the past, of course, we all agree that this is very important, but do we know, or are we on the same page when it comes to how to redress? What kind of redress would really be the right way to try to bring reparation to the ones who have seen their rights violated at such a high level. So in this regard, it's also important to discuss with the victims, to see with people who have experienced a situation of care, and they're the ones who should help us to identify what is the best way. Is it individual financial support or collective action? Certainly changing the legislation and practice is also very important. As I said before, some children may have been facing huge and important difficulties because of the racial discrimination that was systemic in the country. We talk about indigenous people, children from First Nation, who also had the feeling that they lost their tradition. They lost a part of their identity. And this is certainly something that we hear very often. If you are separated from your family, there is a part of yourself that has disappeared. Someone said that he lost his childhood. The inquiries and all action and redress action should start from the community, should start from the victim, hearing the victim, and especially when the state party are the perpetrators of the violation, which is very often the case. And if they are not the perpetrators, they have responsibility anyway, and they have accountability on what happened because they didn't supervise properly the way children are cared in their country. But to ensure this accountability, children need support, way to bring their complaints. They need also child-friendly settings that will allow them to give their testimonies in a way that will allow them to speak. We know that there is also a risk of harming again, and also a risk of retaliation in some cases. And we won't listen to the experience of the children if we don't give them the possibility to express themselves in a right way. We have also talked about the importance also to work on the stage where children are leaving care and accessing to the majority. They are also facing difficulties there and need support and legal support at that stage too. We have also heard an experience of a state party who has shown a political will and of change. So I think that this is also very important to see that there is, in the first place, a political will. Without a political will, it's difficult to work concretely on solution. And this state has shown that there are concrete solutions in place, guardianship, supporting each child individually, avoid children under 12 to be placed in institution. So we can list them. There are many possibilities that are accessible to. Then finally, I think that among the example that we heard, it's important to underline the fact that it's also important to involve the public. The broad public should also be aware of what's happening in the institution and should intervene to ensure that it's not happening again. And this is again the need for an external scrutiny against the states and the possibility to work on the root causes of the systematic violation of children's rights. I talked about it, but I would like to stress the importance of enforcement. If you have conclusion and recommendation from an inquiry commission, it has to be implemented. There has to be a follow-up. and the follow-up has to be collective as well as individual. Redress is important, as we said. My co-host, and I would like to stress that because it was also a way to assess the work that we are doing now, said we will know in 20 years' time if this DGD was a success, and we all hope that it will be a success. That means that we have to implement our own recommendation. And my final word, and that was a call that I wanted also to send to all the participants, and I did it during the workshop. At the level of the committee, we have a very strong tool, which is the OPIC, the Optional Protocol on Individual Complaint, which is not ratified by so many states yet, less than 50 in the world. And when it comes to the use and the implementation of this mechanism, there is still a need to make it known and to use it properly. So again, this is certainly a very concrete and effective mean to react and to seek for redress. Let's use it and let's work on the conclusion of this workshop and the general discussion. I thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Van Kersbeek.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van Kersbeek, and thank you also to all my colleagues and co-panelists for your very rich feedback. The main elements, so listen to children, avoid separations, more resources, and also the importance of accountability, the preparation, etc. So we are at the end of this part of our agenda, and with no further ado, I will give the floor to Mrs. Anne Skelton, the coordinator of the CRC working group on DGD, and also, yes, for the closing remarks for day one. Thank you. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. That was a very great overview of what's been happening this afternoon. And my only regret is that I wish I could divide myself into 3 so that I could have been in all of the sessions. But the really great thing about this online mechanism is that we will be able to see these recorded versions. So whereas when you go to a normal conference and you have to divide up, you often miss out on the parallel working groups. But this time, although we couldn't see them all in real time at the same time, we will get the opportunity to be able to see them. So that's really wonderful. And I look forward to viewing the other 2 besides the one that I actually attended and listened to today. So for our for closing off today, we're actually going to hear from 2 young people. First of all, we're going to hear from Jasmine, and then we're going to hear from Patty. So let me first of all introduce Jasmine to you. She's from Argentina. She's a member of the youth advisory team that has been working to prepare for this DGD for many, many months. She works with the Doncel organization, and she is part of Guia Egreso, which is a youth participation program run by young people who have left or who are about to leave care. She is also part of the Latin American Network of Protection Graduates and is currently studying and working. So she highlights the importance of not underestimating the capacities of young people with experience in care. Over to you, Jasmine.
Hello, Jasmine. No te escuchamos. Gracias.
Hello. Oh, sorry. My name is Jasmine. As you've heard, I was born in Peru, but I live in Argentina. I represent boys, girls, and teenagers that we are coming out from different institutions of care. I am participating in Guía Egreso, which is a collective of young people that, as I have said, that have lived or that we are living homes. And well, I write a little bit in order to have my ideas a little bit clearer. From the Latin American network, from graduates, we acknowledge good practices that we see at the institutions, but we know that many of our rights are vulnerated before we come into the homes because of the lack of prevention of violence in each of our countries, because public policies and the budget do not impact sufficiently our lives. Today, I'm here, talking here with certain privileges because I can study, I can work, have emotional contention, and have basic rights met. I have a house, food, and voice, but unfortunately, it doesn't happen often. We know it because we are here and we have gone through all this. We need the presence of governments on our daily lives, and not only during this event. We are lacking public policies to have access to rights. Sorry. And for teenagers, and we have to create an awareness worldwide, particularly on all the topics that have been dealt with today, to acknowledge and recognize that our lives are worth. Hear attentively and critically what has been discussed today is important. It's going to have more tools for different families and for poverty not being a factor that will divide families. We need to have gender involved as well. We want to see subject of right for the fact that we are people like you, that not to underestimate us or see us from pity. We stop being victims when we raise our voice and we demand our rights of being more visible lives. We have the right to live in a family, and we also have the right to decide if we want to live autonomously, but we need to be granted the necessary resources to do so. But I want to tell you that I have received support, and thank to all of those people that have helped me out: Jime, Anita, Lore, Mai, Linter, Lorsi, Marian, Rakia, Gabi, and all of those people that have touched me throughout my path. I thank this space of participation. I'm very happy and pleased to reach this instance. We are very excited to have you among us tomorrow as well.
Great, thanks very much, Jasmine. And now the last speaker of our day is Patty. She's a young person from Ecuador working with the organization Despiertate. Patty is a passionate advocate for the rights of care experienced children and young people, and she's going to share some of her insights and experience with us now.
Saludos cordiales con cada uno de ustedes.
A cordial greeting to all of you. I want to introduce myself. Patio. I'm 19 years old, and I represent very proudly my beautiful Ecuador. And I represent the Latin American network of graduated from protection. I want to thank every boy, girl, teenagers, and each of the persons that are attending this event, because we acknowledge the efforts that we have undergone in order to be present here. We have different schedules and many other difficulties, but being here, it's so wonderful. I am part of this wonderful team for more than a year now, and all those experiences of those teenagers and children, I come today to represent thousands of boys, girls, and teenagers that are asking themselves when they turn 18, now I am going to be going out of this house, but do I have a future What happens to me? What happens to my brothers and sisters? What happens when I turn 18? Teenager is a scale of lifetime when we have our values made and we have psychological and sexual desires. It is time when we define our life projects and we create our own basics, our own grounds for individual development and for the society at large. We want to be and want a change of life or of quality of life, but we don't know how to do it because we are not heard. You do not respect our opinions, or you think that we are not capable of moving forward. And it's not because of caprice or benefit, it's because we need our space. We need our psychological assistance in order to overcome different life conditions or reasons that made us be living in an alternative house. Now I can say that if one of them, boys, girls, and teenagers, are okay, all their things and all the decisions will be okay. Don't let us be fear because we no longer have another place to go to. I invite you to transform all of this with patience and love for our well-being, because we are, and each of the boys, girls, and teenagers will be the future of Ecuador, India, Peru, Colombia, Argentina, Brazil, and each of the different parts of the world. It's not enough to have a workshop or have a back degree. When you graduate from here, we want promises to be met and specific actions be taken, because perseverance and the fighting for the rights of children and teenagers leads us to a place like this one. And we as children are part of the change that we want to see. Very soon we will witness our work and our devotion. Thank you for your attention. And I want to thank each of and every person that has been behind all of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Patty, for being part of the change that you want to see. That's
And sorry, Chair, you're mute. Thank you.
That was great. Thanks very much to Patty. Thanks for being the change that you want to see. And it was wonderful to hear from Jasmine as well. And I think it was a great ending to our first day, where we've heard so many really useful, interesting insights, thoughts, and ideas that we can take away and that will guide us going forward. So I just want to also remind you about tomorrow's program. So we begin at 8:30 Central European time tomorrow. I know this is the middle of the night for those of you who are in America, but for those of you who are in India or Japan, this is a better time. We're going to have the global welcome and coming together online. There will be a short video. And then at 9, my colleague Sophie Kiladze will give us a recap of today's events, because there'll be some people joining us that perhaps were not able to be here today or were not here all day, maybe. And then we'll divide again into two parallel working groups. Then we'll come back together before our closing session, where we will get some future perspectives going in our discussions. So that's what's on the table for tomorrow. For today, let me just thank everybody. I must say a very deep thanks to the speakers, to the chairpersons, and to the people supporting them, to the young people who supported, and to Secretariat who've been supporting, for all the technological support, which was really amazing. And I must say, I was really enjoying watching the sign language interpretation, wonderful sign language interpretation as well. And also the technical support, the people doing the graphic designing that I saw in one of the sessions. That was also really very fascinating, and we hope to see more of that tomorrow. So all in all, it was a great day. Thank you so much to everyone, and of course, especially our speakers who shared their experiences and their professional knowledge as well. We really appreciate that, and we take it forward tomorrow, where we'll be hearing more from more of you on some other themes that we'll be exploring. So I think that concludes the proceedings for today, and we'll see you tomorrow.